Welcome to episode 48 of Forest Focus, brought to you by the USDA Forest Service Pacific Southwest region. This is the second installment of a mini-series about amphibian conservation and determination. We're calling the mini-series For the Frogs. In each episode, we will be introduced to one native amphibian that can be found in California's national forests. These creatures are important to ecological health, and they can deepen our connections with our public lands once we get to know them. But each of these species is in a state of decline due to overlapping threats, including pathogens, introduced predators, habitat loss, drought, and wildfire. On their own, each threat is a great difficulty, but as a collective, they're quite the formidable foe for the frogs. Fortunately, there is a village of specialists devoted to conserving these species, despite the colossal challenge of the threat supergroup. The stories of their resolute conservation efforts, pursued through obstacles and setbacks, provides portraits of determination we can pocket and apply to our own personal experiences with adversity. This time, we find ourselves in Forest Hill, California, where we meet our guide for this episode.
Dan Teeter, longtime fisheries biologist here on the Tahoe National Forest. Sometimes they call me Dan the Fishman, although these days could easily be Dan the Frogman.
Why might Dan be thought of as the Frogman? For over a decade, he has been leading a collaborative effort to construct new habitat for the California red-legged frog. The construction process includes digging depressions into the ground, laying an aquatic-safe liner into the depression, and covering the liner with soil. The end result is a catch basin for water that functions as a newly constructed wetland for frogs. Why go through the effort? The California red-legged frog is a threatened species under the Federal Endangered Species Act. This frog, named for its red hind legs and abdomen, was once found in abundance from southern Mendocino County in the north part of the state on down south to Baja California in Mexico. But the legacy of the California gold rush and other factors have led to a significant decline in its population. Dan, the Frogman, tells us more as he briefs 14 Forest Service staff who have come out to lend a hand for the frogs on the Tahoe National Forest. They gather in a parking lot along a road leading to the area where they will be constructing habitat.
This is the nucleus of the gold rush. In today's dollars, over $1 billion worth of gold was taken from this area.
The extraction of gold in the late 1800s has had long-reaching impacts. By stripping and digging into the landscape in search of gold, along with moving and channeling streams and removing beaver dams, the habitat of the California red-legged frog was damaged and highly altered. Additionally, the gold rush brought many new settlers to California, to areas where the frog historically thrived. As those settlers converted the land for grazing, farming, or housing, that resulted in additional loss of habitat for the species. In the years following the 1996 listing of the California red-legged frog under the Endangered Species Act, wildlife biologists began surveys to see how they were doing on national forest land and started discussing what could be done to conserve them.
One of our main missions in the early 2000s was to try and find this red-legged frog. So the Tahoe National Forest is almost 1 million acres, and we really pounded all the suitable habitat on the Tahoe National Forest. After 5 or 6 years of 4 nighttime surveys in the most prime habitat on the forest, we weren't finding them. In 2006, this private landowner started daylighting to the community, hey, we've got frogs in some of our settling ponds in this old mining scar. So the staff here on the Tahoe National Forest started asking ourselves, what can we do to help conserve this listed species? So we started thinking about the life history strategy of the species. Well, we know that the frog in the wet season, in October through April, moves about 1 mile from its breeding pond in search of new breeding habitat, foraging habitat. So we thought, is there any way we could build habitat within 1 mile of this known population to help expand the population? And so that's where I started calling in experts like Tom Biebighauser when we consulted the Fish and Wildlife Service, and we told them that we were proposing to build 18 wetlands around this known population. They said that it was the largest conservation effort to date for the species. Right? What a nod from the service. saying that what you're doing really could help the species. So in 2021, a number of us came together as a community to start building habitat for this species. So in 2021, we built 18 wetlands.
That community included 100 volunteers from 7 different states and a variety of organizations and agencies, including Save the Frogs, a global amphibian conservation organization. With the 18 wetlands built, it feels like the moment to roll the credits on the success of this habitat construction. But conservation has a long story arc because nature and our changing climate are always editing the script with some plot twists. In this case, another threat came into the scene.
Flash forward to 2022, the mosquito fire broke and burned through the entire project area.
Those involved in the project feared the worst. Fortunately, the constructed wetlands were intact and the frog population on the nearby private land survived too. To help the landscape recover, Forest Service staff planted native vegetation. This encouraged food sources for the California red-legged frog to populate the wetlands, including insects and the Sierran tree frog.
This year, tens of thousands of Sierran tree frogs have found the wetlands, and we were optimistic that the red-legged frog would soon follow. A couple weeks ago, we detected 2 California red-legged frogs at wetland number 4, which are some of the closest wetlands to the known population of frogs. This was a big moment. We were detecting red-legged frogs occupying the habitat that we constructed. So what a win, right? That expression, if you build it, they will come. It's happening, guys. It's working. It's projects like this that lead to the delisting of species.
This is great news that the California red-legged frog has started to find its way from the private land to the constructed wetlands within the national forests. This means that the population will have more opportunities to expand its numbers, keeping it further from the path leading to extinction. With those glad tidings in mind, Dan explains why we are here today. In short, we are here to witness adaptive management, which will allow us to experience wetland conservation.
There's some humility to restoration work. Of the 18 wetlands that we constructed, 16 of them we used liners. 2 of them we thought we found enough clay content in the soil that it would become hydrophobic. Unfortunately, one of the wetlands that we designed isn't holding water like the lined wetlands. And so there's some adaptive management to some of this work that we're doing. So what you guys are doing today is helping build habitat for a listed species. So it's noble work, hard work. We're going to lay down some geotextile fabric. We're going to put down an aquatic safe liner. And then we're going to, over the top of that, lay down another layer of geotextile fabric. The roll in the back of my truck weighs about 600 pounds. And the roll in the back of Liz's truck is about 300 pounds. So we almost have 1,000 pounds. Like these 3 things that we're looking at, about 1,000 pounds. We have to roll it, we have to drag it, we have to anchor it. We're going to do some frog sway. There's some artistry to some of this stuff. Fortunately, we have Tom Biebighauser out there working with the equipment right now. They're probably digging and prepping the site as we speak.
Time to get to the project site, where we will meet this twice-mentioned wetland conservation expert.
I'm Tom Biebighauser. I work as a wildlife biologist and a wetland ecologist. I worked 34 years for the U.S. Forest Service as a wildlife biologist, where I built wetlands across the nation. I retired 11 years ago, and I've continued designing and building wetlands, and I'm excited to be here in California helping with a major project that will provide breeding habitat for the California red-legged frog. What the Forest Service is doing with this project is that they are creating a wetland area on a mountain ridge. And people think, why are you working on a mountain? Well, the natural wetlands, once present, were located in the valleys. Well, those valleys have all been changed by gold mining in the 1800s. The streams were moved multiple times. They have filled with the sediment and gravel from placer mining. And then there's all the private homes and dwellings and fields in the valleys. If we want to try to help a rare species like the California red-legged frog, we need to find a place where we can build wetlands. We're not going to be able to restore them on the private land. So we have been examining mountaintops and looking for level areas of land. And to build the wetlands, we use heavy equipment, namely an excavator, and in many cases we will bury an aquatic safe liner in the ground. So when it rains and when it snows, these wetlands will fill with water. And then our hope is that the California red-legged frog will find them. When you build a wetland, it's not all done with a machine. You have to have a shovel and a rake, and it's hot, and you're sweating, and it's noisy around the heavy equipment. But you know what you're making is probably going to last for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Speaking of noisy, it's about to get a bit louder. As Tom guides the staff in wetland construction, the excavator and its operator Kenny do their part in the background. It's not a quiet enterprise. Before we enter into the soundtrack of the work, let's get a quick overview of the steps involved. The excavator digs a depression into the ground that is 6.5 feet deep. The depression then needs to be smoothed out and shaped to have 20% slopes. Tom uses a laser level to guide the Forest Service staff where they need to remove or add soil using hand tools like shovels. And then they smooth it out, removing big rocks or roots as they go. Next comes the liner sandwich. First, a geotextile fabric layer, then an aquatic liner, then another geotextile fabric layer. The geotextile fabric layer gives extra protection to the aquatic liner, and together they'll keep the water from seeping into the ground and hence remaining available on the surface for frogs and other wildlife. After that, the team stakes the outer edge of the liners to the ground before the excavator adds 6 inches of soil on top of them. The end result looks like a shallow basin that is ready to catch rain and snow. We'll skip ahead to the point where the liners are laid into the depression, followed by the staking.
So what are we doing here? We are putting this aquatic safe liner in the ground. I think these can last for hundreds of years. We know that they'll survive a fire. So let's get the liner into position.
That'll work. So the team just installed the last geotextile fabric that's laying over on top of the aquatic safe liner. This is a 60 by 60 foot liner, which is definitely by far the largest of the wetlands that we've constructed so far. Collectively, these liners are very heavy. There's about 1,000 pounds of liner that we deployed today. So it takes a team.
With the liners in place, it's time for staking so that the liners won't get wrinkled when the excavator adds 6 inches of soil over the top.
Where you see a yellow X driving a spike, I'm going to do the 4 sides first to anchor it, and then we're going to put them in at about every 1.5 feet.
With the literal big lift complete, the excavator operator gets to work adding the soil on top. Most of the team heads home, and a few will return the next day for the final step, which Dan mentioned a bit earlier, creating frog shui.
A big factor in building these wetlands is something that we've dubbed frog shui, and that's making these habitats as froggy as possible. What do I mean by froggy? Complex. We're trying to add large woody material and cover for this species. We want benthic macroinvertebrates and our insect communities to come in. We want bats utilizing these wetlands, as well as many other animals on the landscape. Water in this part of the world is scarce, and so not only are we benefiting the California red-legged frog, but we feel like we're having a cumulative benefit to the entire ecosystem as a whole.
Tom, who has constructed over 3,000 wetlands in the past 46 years, tells us more about the benefits of doing this work for the frogs and beyond.
So I think one of the greatest things that is happening here is that the Forest Service and the volunteers that are helping with this project know what can be done to help a threatened species, and they're doing it. They're taking action to help these species along with all the other animals that use wetlands. You visit one of these wetlands, you're going to see ducks, you're going to see white-tailed deer drinking out of the water. These wetlands are full of life. All of us are concerned about climate change. When we build these wetlands, on ridge tops and it rains, we are holding that water on site so it can be used by the California red-legged frog and by all these other species. And it's a small amount of water that's being kept here, but it's an important amount of water on the landscape. And there's really no water out here. And I wonder, if I were a fox or if I were a raccoon, where would I find water? I'm going to have to go down into the valley where the highways are and where people are living with their dogs, and I'm going to have all these conflicts. And so by having water up on these ridge tops, we're going to provide all these animals with a safe place to get a drink. And what I notice in talking to you now is that you're swatting mosquitoes. The mosquitoes are getting to us right here. Did you know that the wetlands we're building will not breed mosquitoes? And why is that? Okay, see, right now, the only water in this area is found in a few ditches, and the mosquitoes are bothering us because a ditch is not a healthy wetland. In a healthy wetland, which these will be healthy wetlands, you are likely to find in the water dragonflies and dragonfly larvae. You're going to find damselfly larvae. You're going to find water boatmen, water striders. You're going to find all these species that feed on mosquito larvae. So what do we say about a healthy wetland? Mosquitoes may check in, but they won't check out. I believe that one of the best things we can do to help our environment is to build a wetland area. So I would like to introduce as many people as I can to the values of wetlands. It's a thrill. To build a wetland, you don't have to be an engineer. You just have to have a love for the environment, and you can do something that will last a lifetime.
Constructing habitat provides benefits that can last a lifetime, and they can help species that are in a state of decline, like the California red-legged frog. To send us off from this submersion in amphibian conservation, Dan reflects on this collaborative effort to construct habitat and the success already seen, even with the impacts of the 2022 mosquito fire.
I think a big part of the success for this project was really just all of the volunteers, the NGOs, the state and federal partners, as well as the community, coming together to give these frogs a seat at the table and trying to help expand their population. When I saw a California red-legged frog occupying our newly constructed wetlands, it just was this amazing moment where you realize that these are the kind of projects that lead to species being delisted. And it was just a career highlight for me, and not just a career highlight, a personal highlight.
And for some frog philosophy to take home, let's consider this. Sometimes what has been lost cannot be restored, but something new can be constructed. In this case, land previously providing habitat for California red-legged frogs is now being used for a variety of other important purposes, including agriculture and housing, or is otherwise significantly damaged by the legacy of mining. The habitat cannot be restored, but as we've seen from all the dedicated efforts of volunteers, a variety of organizations and agencies, and Forest Service staff involved in this wetland project, new habitat can be constructed. So too with aspects of our own lives. Sometimes a lost job, aspiration, or relationship cannot be restored. But in such moments, we can remember the California red-legged frog and consider where and how we might construct something new. When applying ourselves to that figurative construction, we might find, like Dan, a personal highlight that would not have otherwise come into our lives. Thanks for listening. For those who are curious to learn more, go over to the show description page and click on the links. To find more episodes, search for Forest Focused Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, enjoy your public lands. Please remember to recreate responsibly, know before you go, and learn what you can do to prevent wildfires. Take care. This podcast is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service, and the USDA is an equal opportunity provider, employer, and lender.